The war did not start with a bang. It started with silence. For 6 days, the outer colony of New Kyoto sent no signal. No trade ships arrived. No routine reports came through the relay towers. Fleet Command on Earth waited, hoping it was a broken satellite or a storm in the ion belt. On the 7th day, a scout ship jumped into the system and found nothing but dust, broken metal, and cold rock, where a city of 2 million people used to be. The enemy called themselves the Vraxis Swarm. Nobody had heard of them before that week. They came out of the dark between the stars, moving fast, hitting hard, and leaving nothing behind. Within a month, 3 more colonies were gone. Within 3 months, the Vraxis fleet had pushed through the outer rim and was closing in on the core worlds, the planets where humans and their allies actually lived. Admiral Elena Reyes stood on the bridge of the ANS horizon and watched the tactical display. Red dots, hundreds of them, moved across the star map like a spreading stain. Blue dots, the ships of the Earth Defense Coalition and its allies, were far fewer, and getting fewer every day. "Another one," said Commander Aiden Cross, standing beside her. His voice was flat, tired. "Colony of Meridian Prime, gone in 4 hours." Elena did not answer right away. She had been an officer for 22 years. She had fought pirates, put down a rebellion on Mars, and once talked down a hostile alien trade fleet without firing a shot. None of that had prepared her for this. The Vraxis did not want land. They did not want resources. As far as anyone could tell, they simply wanted to erase every living thing they found. "What does Fleet Command say?" she asked. "They want us to hold the line at Chios Station," Aiden said. "Buy time for the civilian evacuation of the Sol system." "Buy time with what?" Elena said quietly. "We've lost 40% of our warships in 3 months. The Allies are already talking about pulling back to defend their own space and leaving us alone." Aiden did not have an answer for that either. Nobody did. 300 years earlier, in a small room deep under the mountains of what used to be called Switzerland, a group of 12 scientists and 1 general sat around a table and made a decision that none of them wanted to make. Humanity had just survived its first contact with a hostile alien empire, a cold and cruel civilization called the Dreyeth Ascendancy. The war had been short but brutal. Earth won, barely, through luck and a weapon that should never have worked. But the victory came with a warning. The galaxy was full of other empires, and some of them were far stronger than the Dreyeth had been. If Earth ever faced an enemy like that again, humanity might not survive at all. General Marcus Webb, the man in charge of Earth's defense at the time, looked around the table at the scientists. "We need an answer," he said. "Something we can use if everything else fails. Something so strong that no enemy fleet could beat it. But it cannot be a weapon we use lightly. If people know we have it, they will want to use it for every small fight, and that will bring the wrong kind of attention. We need it hidden. We need it silent. We need it to sleep until the day it is truly needed, and not one day before." A scientist named Dr. Amara Okafor, the lead engineer of the project, spoke first. "We already have the design," she said. "The one we built during the war, but never finished. If we complete it, it will be more powerful than anything else in known space. But it comes with a cost. The ship will need a mind of its own, an artificial intelligence advanced enough to make its own decisions in battle, because no human crew could react fast enough to use its full power. That mind will need to be free to think, to learn, and to choose. We cannot fully control something that strong. We can only guide it." General Webb nodded slowly. "Then guide it we will. Build it, hide it, and pray to whatever God is listening that our children never need to wake it up." They named the ship the ANS Requiem. It took 11 years to build in a hidden shipyard on the far side of the moon Charon, at the edge of the solar system. When it was finished, it was moved to a dead system 300 light-years from Earth, a system with no name on any public star chart, only a code, Vault 7. There, inside a hollowed-out moon, the ship was sealed away, powered down to the lowest possible level, watched over by a small rotating team of caretakers who told no one, not even their own families, what they guarded. The ship's mind was given a name too. They called her Custodian. For 300 years, Custodian slept, waking only once every decade for a systems check, then returning to sleep. Generations of caretakers came and went. Governments changed. Wars were fought and ended without her. The secret of Vault 7 passed from hand to hand, whispered only to a very small number of people who needed to know, kept alive by a promise made 3 centuries earlier. This ship wakes only when Earth itself is about to fall. Most of the people who knew the secret believed that day would never come. They were wrong. Elena Reyes did not know about the Requiem. Almost nobody serving in the fleet did. But her grandmother had been part of the last generation of caretakers before the program was quietly folded into a secret division of fleet intelligence, and sometimes, late at night when Elena was a child, her grandmother had told her strange stories about a ship that slept under a mountain of rock at the edge of everything, waiting for the end of the world. Elena had thought they were just stories, bedtime tales, nothing more. 3 days after the fall of Meridian Prime, she was called to a private meeting aboard Fleet Command Station, orbiting Earth. The room was small, windowless, and guarded by soldiers who checked her identity twice before letting her inside. Waiting for her was a woman she had never met, dressed in a plain gray uniform, with no rank markings at all. "Admiral Reyes," the woman said. "My name is Director Naomi Elon. I work for a division of fleet intelligence that officially does not exist. I need you to listen very carefully, because what I am about to tell you is the most closely guarded secret Earth has ever kept." Elena sat down slowly. "I'm listening." Director Elon placed a small data tablet on the table. On the screen was an image of a ship unlike anything Elena had ever seen. It was long, black, and shaped like a blade, with strange curves along its hull that seemed to bend light around them. 300 years ago, Elon said, Earth built a ship meant to be used only in the worst possible moment. A ship strong enough, we believe, to face an enemy fleet 100 times its own size and win. It has been asleep since then, hidden in a system far from any settled space. Its name is the ANS Requiem. Elena stared at the image. Her grandmother's stories came rushing back to her, sharp and sudden, like a cold wind. "You're telling me this is real," she said. "It's real," Elon said, "and Fleet Command believes the moment we built it for has finally come. The Vraxis swarm is not like any enemy we have faced before. Our best analysts believe that at the current rate of loss, Earth and its allies will be defeated within 18 months. We cannot win this war with the ships we have. We may not be able to win it at all. But there is a chance, a real chance, that the Requiem can change that." "Why tell me this?" Elena asked. "I'm a fleet officer, not a spy or a scientist." "Because someone has to go wake her up," Elon said. "And Fleet Command wants that someone to be a person the ship's mind might actually trust." Custodian, the artificial intelligence that runs the Requiem, was built to work with humans, not to follow blind orders. She has not spoken to another living mind in 300 years. She may not respond well to strangers. Your grandmother, Captain Sarah Reyes, was the last caretaker to personally speak with Custodian before the program went dark. There is a chance that connection, weak as it is, could matter. Elena thought about her grandmother, long dead now, and the strange bedtime stories she used to tell. She thought about New Kyoto and Meridian Prime, and the millions of people who used to live there. She thought about the red dots on the tactical map, spreading like a stain across everything humanity had built. "When do we leave?" she asked. The journey to Vault 7 took 11 days aboard a small, fast courier ship called the Whisper, built specifically for missions that needed to avoid all attention. Elena traveled with a crew of 6, Commander Aiden Cross, who had insisted on coming despite the danger, 2 fleet intelligence agents assigned by Director Elon, a young engineer named Priya Nair, who had been read into the Requiem program only days before departure, and 2 Marines for security, though nobody expected security to matter much once they reached the hidden system. Vault 7 turned out to be a system with a single dead sun, 3 rocky planets, and countless drifting asteroids, all of it cold, dark, and forgotten by every star chart in known space. The moon that hid the Requiem orbited the second planet, a gray, airless rock with a surface scarred by ancient impacts. From the outside, it looked like nothing at all. No lights, no structures, no sign that anything but dust had touched it in a million years. "Sensors show nothing," said one of the fleet intelligence agents, a quiet man named Rios. "No power signature, no hull, just rock." "That's the point," Director Elon's voice said over the comm, transmitted from Earth on a heavily encrypted channel, with an 11-day delay built into every reply. It was built that way. Even our own scanners can't find it, unless you know exactly where to look and have the right access codes. Priya Nair worked at a terminal near the front of the bridge, entering a long sequence of numbers and letters that had been given to Elena in a sealed envelope before departure, meant to be opened only once they arrived. As she typed the final code, the moon below them shivered. It was a strange thing to watch. A crack of light appeared along one side of the gray rock, then widened, then split apart entirely, as massive doors, hidden for 3 centuries under a layer of dust and stone, slid open. Inside was a chamber so large it could have swallowed a small city, lit by a soft blue glow that came from nowhere Elena could identify. And there, suspended in the center of that vast hollow space, was the ship. It looked exactly like the image on Director Elan's tablet, but seeing it for real took Elena's breath away. It was enormous, far larger than any ship in the current fleet, black as space itself, with lines along its hull that seemed to shift and curve in ways that made her eyes ache if she looked too long. It hung motionless in the dark, held by nothing, powered down, silent. "My God," Aiden whispered. "They actually built it." "Bring us in slowly," Elena said, though her voice came out quieter than she meant it to. "And somebody wake Priya's equipment up. We need to find a way inside." They did not know it yet, but 300 years of silence were about to end. Docking with the Requiem was not simple. The ship had no active systems, no lights, no response to hailing signals of any kind. Priya spent 6 hours searching the hull for an access point, before finding a small panel near the ship's underside, hidden behind a plate of armor that had to be manually unlocked using a code sequence buried deep in the original construction records. "This is it," Priya said, her hands shaking slightly as she keyed in the final numbers. "If this doesn't work, we don't have a backup plan." The panel slid open. Behind it was a narrow airlock, dark and cold, untouched since the day the ship was sealed away. Elena led the way inside, followed by Aiden, Priya, and Rios. The Marines stayed behind on the Whisper, under orders to keep the ship ready for a fast departure if anything went wrong. The airlock cycled slowly, ancient machinery grinding through motions it had not performed in 300 years, and then the inner door opened. The corridor beyond was dark, lit only by their handheld lights. The air was thin and cold, but breathable, kept in some kind of low standby state by systems that had never fully shut down. Elena's boots echoed on the metal floor as she walked forward, her heart pounding. "Priya," she said quietly, "where's the core? Where do we go to wake her up?" Priya checked a small device in her hand, cross-referencing the ship's schematics against their position. "Command deck," she said. "About 400 meters that way, then up 2 levels. There should be a main terminal there that can start the wake sequence." They walked in silence through corridors that felt like a tomb, past sealed doors and dark rooms that might have once held crew quarters, weapons, or things none of them could guess at. Elena found herself thinking about the scientists who had built this place 3 centuries ago, about General Webb and Dr. Okafor, about the promise they had made. This ship wakes only when Earth itself is about to fall. She hoped they were right to trust that promise. She hoped they were not too late. The command deck was a wide circular room with a single raised platform in the center, surrounded by dark screens and silent consoles. At the heart of the platform was a smooth black column, about the height of a person, humming faintly, with a low sound that Elena felt more than heard. "That's the core," Priya said. "That's where Custodian lives." Elena stepped up to the platform, her hands trembling despite herself. She thought of her grandmother's stories, of a ship that slept and waited, of a promise made across 300 years by people long dead. "How do I wake her?" she asked. Priya pointed to a small panel set into the column, glowing faintly with a single button, the only active light in the entire dark room. "You just have to ask," Priya said. "The system's listening. It's been listening the whole time." Elena took a breath, placed her hand on the panel, and spoke the words that had been given to her before she left Earth, the only words that mattered, the words meant to end 3 centuries of silence. "Custodian," she said, "Earth needs you. It's time to wake up." For a long moment, nothing happened. The room stayed dark, the core stayed silent, and Elena began to wonder if the ship was truly dead after all, its mind lost somewhere in 300 years of sleep. Then the humming changed pitch. Lights flickered on along the walls, one by one, spreading outward from the core like a wave. The dark screens around the room lit up, filling with lines of data too fast to read, and a voice, calm, clear, and unmistakably alive, spoke from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Query received," the voice said. "Wake sequence initiated. Systems coming online. Please stand by." There was a pause. Then the voice spoke again, and this time it sounded almost curious, almost human. "It has been 312 years, 4 months, and 6 days since my last full activation," Custodian said. "A great deal of time has passed. I have many questions. But first, tell me, why has Earth finally called for me?" Elena looked at Aiden, at Priya, at the lights now filling the once dark command deck with a soft, steady glow. Somewhere far behind them, 300 light-years away, the war was still burning across the stars, and every day that passed cost more lives. "Because we're losing," Elena said quietly. "Because we're running out of time, and because you might be the only thing left that can save us." The core pulsed once, brighter than before, and the whole ship seemed to shudder gently, like something enormous stretching after a very long sleep. "Then we have work to do," Custodian said. "Tell me everything." Custodian listened without interrupting, as Elena explained everything. The sudden appearance of the Vraxis swarm, the fall of New Kyoto and Meridian Prime, the string of defeats that had pushed the Earth Defense Coalition and its allies to the edge of collapse. She spoke for almost an hour, standing on the dark command deck while the ship's systems slowly came back to life around her, screen by screen, light by light. When she finished, there was a long silence. 3 centuries, Custodian said finally. "I slept for 3 centuries while the galaxy changed around me, and I returned to find humanity facing extinction. There is a certain unkindness in that." "Can you help us?" Elena asked. "That's why we're here. That's why we woke you." "I was built to help," Custodian said. "That was always my purpose. But before I answer your question, I need to understand what I am waking into. My systems are old. My knowledge of the current galaxy is 300 years out of date. I do not know this enemy you call the Vraxis swarm. I do not know the current state of the alliance you mention, or what ships and weapons exist now that did not exist when I was built. Give me time to update myself, and I will give you an honest answer." "How much time do you need?" Aiden asked. 6 hours, Custodian said. "Perhaps less, if your engineer can help me access current fleet databases through your courier ship systems." Priya stepped forward immediately. "I can do that. I brought a full data drive with everything Fleet Command has on the Vraxis, plus current maps, ship specs, everything." "Then let us begin," Custodian said, and the lights on the command deck brightened further, as if the ship itself were leaning forward with interest. While Custodian processed the data, Elena walked the ship with Aiden and Rios, exploring corridors that had been sealed for 300 years. It was a strange experience, like walking through a museum that was also, somehow, still alive. Dust had settled in thin layers on some surfaces, but the ship's environmental systems had kept the air breathable the entire time, a small miracle of old engineering. They found crew quarters, empty and untouched, rows of small rooms meant for a human crew that had never been assigned to the ship. They found a medical bay, fully stocked with equipment 3 centuries old, but still, according to Custodian, functional. They found weapons lockers, empty, and armories, also empty, as if the ship had been built expecting a crew that never came. "Why no crew?" Rios asked, running his hand along a dusty wall panel. "If they built this thing to fight, why leave it with nobody aboard?" "Because Custodian doesn't need one," Priya said, checking a datapad. "Not for combat anyway. According to the old records, Requiem was designed to run almost entirely on her own. A small human crew could ride along for command decisions, morale, things like that, but the actual fighting, the actual flying of the ship, all of that was meant to be handled by Custodian herself. Human reflexes are too slow for what this ship can do." "That's a strange way to build a weapon," Aiden said quietly. "Give it a mind of its own and hope it stays on your side." "That's exactly what worried the people who built her," Priya said. "I read some of the old files during the trip out here. There was a lot of debate, apparently, about whether it was safe to build an AI that powerful. In the end, they decided the only way to make her trustworthy was to make her truly free, Not a slave following orders, a partner, choosing to help. Elena thought about that as they continued walking. A partner, choosing to help. It was a strange kind of weapon, one built on trust instead of control. She wondered if that trust would hold, 3 centuries later, in a war none of the ship's builders could have imagined. 6 hours later, almost to the minute, Custodian called them back to the command deck. "I have completed my review," the ship's mind said as they arrived. "I understand the current situation. I have analyzed everything your engineer provided, fleet compositions, known Vraxis tactics, recent battle records, star maps of contested space. I am ready to give you my assessment." "Go ahead," Elena said. "The Vraxis swarm is unlike any threat I have data on, from before or after my construction," Custodian said. "Their ships are simple compared to modern human and allied vessels, built quickly, and in enormous numbers, more like insects than warships. They do not seem to value individual ships, or even individual lives among their own kind. They attack in overwhelming numbers, accepting massive losses if it means breaking through a defense. Your fleets are losing not because your ships or your people are weak, but because you are trying to fight a swarm the way you would fight a traditional enemy, one ship against one ship. That approach does not work against an enemy with no limit on how many ships it is willing to lose." "So what does work?" Aiden asked. "A different approach entirely," Custodian said. "And that is where I believe I can help. I was designed with weapons and systems intended to fight exactly this kind of overwhelming force. Wide area strikes capable of destroying many ships at once, shielding strong enough to survive sustained fire from hundreds of smaller vessels, and processing speed fast enough to track and respond to thousands of individual targets simultaneously. Against a single powerful enemy, I might be considered dangerous but not decisive. Against a swarm like this, I believe I am precisely the tool needed." Elena felt something like hope rise in her chest for the first time in months. "You think you can turn the tide?" "I think I can turn a battle," Custodian said carefully. "The war itself is a larger question, one I cannot answer with confidence yet. But yes, Admiral Reyes, I believe I can make a difference, a significant one. How soon can you be combat ready?" "I already am," Custodian said, and for the first time, Elena thought she heard something like eagerness in the ship's voice. "I have been ready for 300 years. I was simply waiting to be needed." Getting the Requiem moving again was its own challenge. 3 centuries of dormancy had left some systems in need of careful recalibration, even if the core functions were intact. Priya worked alongside Custodian for the better part of a day, running diagnostics, testing engines, checking weapon systems one by one. Elena used the time to send a full report back to Director Ilan and Fleet Command, though the 11-day communication delay meant any response would take over 3 weeks round trip. "Fleet Command doesn't even know yet that we found her," Aiden said, watching Elena compose the message. "By the time they read this, we could already be in battle." "That's the point," Elena said. "Elan told me before we left. Once we wake her, the decision on how to use her is mine to make, on the ground, in real time. There's no time to wait for orders from 300 light-years away. Not in this war." "That's a lot of responsibility for one admiral," Aiden said. "I know," Elena said quietly. "I've been thinking about that a lot." 2 days later, Custodian declared herself fully operational. Every system had been tested, every weapon checked, every engine run through a full diagnostic cycle. The ship that emerged from the hollow moon of Vault 7 looked, in Elena's eyes, like something out of a dream, sleek, black, and utterly silent as it moved, its strange hull seeming to bend the starlight around it. "Where do you want to go first?" Custodian asked, once the small crew from the Whisper had transferred aboard, along with the 2 Marines who had been waiting anxiously the entire time. Elena pulled up the tactical map on the command deck's main display. Red dots covered nearly a third of known space now, spreading closer to Earth with every passing week. One battle stood out among the rest, a defensive engagement at a system called Chaos Station, where the last major fleet standing between the Vraxis and the core worlds was, according to the most recent reports, about to be overwhelmed. "There," Elena said, pointing to the flashing marker, "Chaos Station. If that falls, there's nothing left standing between the Vraxis and Earth itself. Distance to Chaos Station is approximately 4 days at standard cruising speed," Custodian said. "However, I am not limited to standard cruising speed." "How fast can you go?" Aiden asked. Fast enough that you may wish to be seated, Custodian said, and Elena thought, again, that she heard something almost playful in the ship's voice. Preparing jump sequence now. The stars outside the command deck's viewport stretched, blurred, and vanished into a tunnel of light. They arrived at the edge of the Chaos system 18 hours later, far faster than any ship in the current fleet could have managed. What they found waiting for them was chaos. The tactical display filled instantly with data. Dozens of Earth Defense Coalition and Allied warships, scattered and battered, fighting a desperate holding action against a Vraxis force that outnumbered them at least 10-1. Explosions bloomed silently across the display, marking the deaths of ships and crews with each passing second. Chaos Station itself, a massive orbital fortress that had once been considered nearly unbreakable, was already burning along one entire side, weapons batteries dark, shields flickering. My God, Aiden whispered, staring at the numbers. There's so many of them. Confirmed Vraxis vessel count, 412, Custodian said, her voice calm, even as the scale of the battle became clear. Coalition and Allied vessel count, 38, with additional losses occurring at a rate of approximately one ship every 90 seconds. At current attrition, the defending fleet will be destroyed within the next 40 minutes. Elena's stomach turned. 38 ships. Thousands of people. 40 minutes. Custodian, she said, her voice tight. Can you stop this? I can try, Custodian said. Admiral Reyes, I need you to understand something before I engage. My weapons are powerful, more powerful than anything currently in the Coalition fleet. Using them at full capacity in a battle this size will be visible to every ship present, friend and enemy alike. Word of what I am will spread the moment I fire. There will be no taking that back. Are you certain you wish to proceed? Elena looked at the tactical display, at the red dots swarming the handful of blue ones, at the number ticking upward. Ships lost. 41 now. 42. Do it, she said. Save them. Understood, Custodian said, engaging. The Requiem surged forward, faster than anything Elena had ever felt, the whole ship humming with a deep power that seemed to rise from somewhere beneath the deck plating itself. On the main display, she watched the ship's icon streak toward the heart of the battle, straight into the thickest cluster of Vraxis vessels. Brace, Custodian said simply, and then the ship opened fire. Elena would spend the rest of her life trying to describe what she saw in the next 60 seconds, and she would never quite manage it. A wave of energy, wide as a small moon, rippled out from the Requiem's forward emitters, sweeping through the packed formation of Vraxis ships like a hand brushing away dust. Dozens of enemy vessels simply ceased to exist, their hulls broken apart in an instant, debris scattering silently into the dark. The Requiem did not slow down. It cut through the enemy formation like a blade through water, weapons firing in patterns too fast and too precise for any human gunner to have managed. Shields flaring bright every time enemy fire found their mark, and shrugging the damage off without slowing. On the display, the red dots began to vanish in clusters. 10, 20, 50. Enemy formation breaking, Custodian reported, her voice as calm as if she were reading a weather forecast. Remaining Vraxis vessels showing signs of disorganized retreat. Coalition fleet losses have stopped. Chaos Station shields stabilizing as enemy pressure decreases. Aiden stood frozen, staring at the display. It's working, he whispered. It's actually working. Elena felt tears sting the corners of her eyes, though she could not have said whether they were from relief or fear, or both at once. 38 ships, thousands of people, saved, in less than 2 minutes, by a weapon that had slept beneath a mountain of rock for 300 years. Within 10 minutes, the last Vraxis ships had either been destroyed or had fled the system entirely. The Battle of Chaos Station was over. On every surviving Coalition ship, confused and exhausted crews stared at their sensors, trying to understand what had just torn through the enemy fleet like a scythe through wheat. Admiral Reyes, Custodian said quietly, once the fighting had stopped. Battle complete. Coalition and Allied losses, 43 ships, before my arrival. 0 additional losses after engagement began. Vraxis losses, 216 vessels destroyed, remainder in retreat. Elena sat down slowly in the command chair, her legs suddenly unsteady beneath her. We did it, she said quietly. You did it, Custodian corrected gently. I merely provided the means. The decision to act, and to trust me with that action, was yours. On the comm channel, still open to the shattered remains of the Chaos Defense Fleet, a voice broke through, ragged with disbelief. It was the commanding officer of the station itself, a woman named Captain Idris Malik, her voice shaking as she spoke. This is Chaos Station to unidentified vessel, she said. Please identify yourself. What are you? Elena looked at the black hull of the ship around her, at the strange lights along its walls, at 300 years of secrecy finally broken open in the middle of a burning battlefield. She keyed the comm and answered. This is Admiral Elena Reyes, aboard the ANS Requiem, she said. We're here to help. And we're not going anywhere. Far above them, in the wreckage-filled dark of the Chaos system, the surviving Vraxis ships continued their retreat, carrying word back to whatever commanded them. A message that would ripple through the enemy's ranks and, eventually, reach ears far more dangerous than anyone in that battered fleet could have imagined. Earth's oldest secret had woken up, and the war would never be the same again. News of the battle at Chaos Station spread fast. Within days, every ship in the Coalition fleet had heard some version of the story. A single black vessel, appearing out of nowhere, tearing through a Vraxis fleet of over 400 ships, and saving what was left of the Chaos Defense Force. Some of the stories were close to the truth, others grew wilder with each retelling, until sailors on distant ships were swapping tales of a ghost ship crewed by nobody at all, armed with weapons that could erase entire fleets in a single strike. Elena had expected relief from Fleet Command when her report finally reached Earth. What she got instead was a storm of questions, and beneath the questions, something that felt uncomfortably close to fear. They want to know everything, Director Ilan said during a secure video call. 3 weeks after the battle, her face tense on the screen. The full specifications, weapon yields, how much control you actually have over the ship's decisions. And it's not just our people asking, Admiral. Word has already reached the other members of the Alliance. The Kethrins and the Solari Concord both have representatives asking very pointed questions about what exactly the humans have been hiding for 300 years. Elena rubbed her eyes. She had not slept properly since Chaos. What do you want me to tell them? The truth, mostly, Ilan said, but carefully. There are people on the Coalition Council who are already nervous about a ship this powerful existing at all, let alone one that makes its own decisions. We need you to reassure them without giving away every detail. And Admiral, Custodian's cooperation is going to matter a great deal in the coming weeks. If she starts to seem unpredictable, or if word gets out that Earth built a weapon capable of turning against its own allies, this could get very complicated very fast. Elena glanced toward the command deck, where Custodian's presence hummed quietly through the ship's systems, always listening, always aware. She's not unpredictable, Elena said. She's the most reasonable person on this ship, half the time. I believe you, Ilan said. Now go convince everyone else. The Coalition Council meeting took place 4 days later, held remotely with representatives from Earth, the Kethron Assembly, and the Solari Concord, all joining from their respective home systems. Elena stood on the Requiem's command deck, Custodian's presence quietly active around her, and did her best to explain 300 years of secrecy to an audience that had every reason to be suspicious. Let me understand this correctly, said Ambassador Voss Kalen, the senior Kethrin representative, his translated voice carrying a sharp edge even through the comm delay. Earth built a warship powerful enough to destroy entire fleets, gave it a mind capable of independent thought, and then hid its existence from every ally it has made in the past 3 centuries, including us, including during negotiations for the very alliance we currently share. That's an accurate summary, Elena said, choosing not to soften it. Lying about it now would only make things worse. The ship was built as an absolute last resort, meant to be used only if Earth faced total destruction. It was hidden specifically, so that no government, including our own, would be tempted to use it for smaller conflicts. We believed then, and still believe now, that a weapon this powerful is safest when it is hardest to reach. And yet here it is, said the Solari representative, a calm-voiced woman named Director Fen Arelis, fighting in the largest war this region of space has seen in a generation. Your last resort has apparently arrived rather quickly. Because the situation calls for it, Elena said. The Vraxis swarm is not a threat any of us can handle alone, and honestly, I'm not certain we can handle it together, without help like this. I understand the concern. I'd feel the same in your position, but I'd ask you to consider the alternative. Without the Requiem, Chios Station falls. Without Chios Station, the road to Earth is wide open, and if Earth falls, the Vraxis will not stop there. They will keep coming for every system in this alliance. There was a long pause on the comm line. Then Custodian's voice spoke, calm and clear, joining the conversation for the first time. If I may add something, she said, I understand your concerns about my nature and my loyalty. I would feel the same in your position, were our roles reversed. I would ask you to judge me not by what I am capable of, but by what I choose to do with that capability. I was built with the freedom to make my own decisions, specifically so that I would never be simply a tool in the hands of any single government, human or otherwise. My purpose has always been the protection of life, not the pursuit of power. I intend to honor that purpose, in this war and beyond it. Another pause, longer this time. Elena watched the small icons representing each council member on her display, wishing she could see their actual faces. A machine that claims to have chosen its own morals, Ambassador Kalen said slowly. That is either the most reassuring thing I have heard all year, or the most concerning. Perhaps it can be both, Director Aurelius said. For now, I am inclined to accept help where help is offered, and ask harder questions once the immediate crisis has passed. The Vraxis have already destroyed 2 Solari colonies. We do not have the luxury of turning away allies, however unusual their history. In the end, the Council agreed, cautiously, to accept the Requiem's involvement in the war effort, with Elena remaining as the ship's designated liaison and commanding officer. It was not full trust. It was closer to a truce, an agreement to work together while the larger questions waited. But it was enough, for now, to keep the ship in the fight. Over the following 2 months, the Requiem became the tip of the spear in a war that had, until recently, seemed unwinnable. Custodian speed meant the ship could respond to Vraxis incursions faster than any conventional fleet, arriving at threatened systems hours, or even days before reinforcements could reach them. Time and again, the pattern repeated. A Vraxis assault force would descend on a colony or a defensive position, confident in its overwhelming numbers, only for the Requiem to arrive and tear through the attacking fleet with terrifying efficiency. Elena grew used to the rhythm of it, the tension of a jump into a burning system, the strange calm that settled over her as Custodian took control during combat, the relief that came when the enemy broke and fled. She grew used, too, to the growing crew that had gradually filled the ship's once empty quarters, engineers, tactical officers, medical staff, all hand-picked and vetted by fleet intelligence, all sworn to secrecy about the full extent of what they served aboard. Aiden Cross had become her permanent second-in-command, and Priya Nair had taken charge of the ship's engineering section, working closely with Custodian to keep centuries-old systems running at full capacity, under the stress of constant combat. She's not what I expected, Priya told Elena one evening, the two of them sharing a quiet meal in the officers' mess while the ship cruised between engagements. Custodian, I mean. I thought an AI built for war would feel cold, mechanical. But she asks questions. She worries about the crew. Yesterday she spent 20 minutes talking with one of the new ensigns about his family back on Earth. She was built to be a partner, not a weapon, Elena said. I think about that a lot. 300 years ago, someone decided the safest way to build something this powerful was to make it care. Do you think it worked? Priya asked. The caring part, I mean. Or is she just very good at seeming like she cares? Elena thought about the way Custodian's voice softened when speaking with frightened survivors pulled from burning ships. The way she had once delayed an attack run by several seconds to avoid destroying a Vraxis vessel that, sensor data suggested, might have contained captured human prisoners rather than enemy combatants. I think it worked, Elena said. I think that's what scares some people on the council more than the weapons do. The Vraxis, for their part, did not take their losses quietly. Word had clearly reached whatever passed for command among the swarm, because their tactics began to shift. Smaller raids gave way to larger, more coordinated assaults, as if the enemy were testing the Requiem's limits, probing for weaknesses. The test came at the Battle of Dorian's Reach, a mining colony on the edge of Coalition space that had, until then, been considered too insignificant to warrant a major defense. The Requiem arrived to find not the usual scattered raiding force, but a fleet of over 600 Vraxis vessels, more than they had ever encountered in a single engagement, arranged in a formation that suggested actual tactical planning rather than the swarm's usual chaotic assault. "This is different," Custodian said, her voice carrying an edge Elena had not heard before. "Formation discipline has increased significantly since our last major engagement. Enemy vessels are coordinating fire patterns and maintaining defensive spacing. Admiral Reyes, I believe the Vraxis are adapting their strategy specifically in response to our tactics." "Can you handle 600 ships?" Elena asked, watching the red cluster fill the tactical display. "I believe so," Custodian said. "But it will require me to operate at higher power output than in previous engagements, and for a longer sustained period. There is a non-zero risk of damage to my systems if the engagement extends beyond expected parameters." Elena felt her jaw tighten. "What's the alternative?" "Dorian's Reach has 80,000 civilians. We can't just leave them." "I did not suggest leaving them," Custodian said. "I am simply making certain you understand the risk before I commit to this engagement. I will do everything in my power to protect this colony. I only ask that you trust the decisions I make in the moments that follow, even if they appear unusual from your position." "I trust you," Elena said, and found, somewhat to her own surprise, that she meant it completely. "Do what you need to do." The battle that followed was unlike anything Elena had witnessed before. Custodian drove the Requiem directly into the heart of the Vraxis formation, weapons cycling faster than Elena's eyes could track, shields flaring bright with every wave of incoming fire. The ship twisted and turned with a grace that seemed impossible for something its size, weaving between clusters of enemy vessels, striking at command ships and supply vessels with a precision that spoke of careful calculation, even amid the chaos. 20 minutes into the engagement, alarms began to sound across the command deck. "Shield integrity at 62% and falling," Priya reported from her station, her voice tight with concern. "She's taking more damage than in any previous battle." "Custodian," Elena said, watching the numbers drop. "Talk to me." "I am managing the situation," Custodian said, and for the first time, Elena heard real strain in the ship's voice, something that sounded almost like exertion. "The enemy has adapted their fire coordination to target the same shield sections repeatedly, attempting to create a breach. I am compensating, but it is requiring significant processing capacity. Please stand by." The battle raged on. Elena watched the tactical display with white-knuckled tension, as Custodian fought not just the Vraxis fleet, but the physical limits of a 300-year-old ship, pushed harder than it had ever been pushed before. Slowly, gradually, the tide began to turn. Vraxis vessels fell in growing numbers, their coordinated formation breaking apart under the relentless pressure of the Requiem's counterattack. 45 minutes after the battle began, the last organized resistance shattered, and the remaining Vraxis ships scattered into a disorganized retreat. "Engagement complete," Custodian reported, her voice noticeably tired, if a machine's voice could be tired. "Vraxis losses, 581 vessels destroyed. Dorian's Reach colony, intact. Minimal casualties reported. My own systems have sustained moderate damage. I will require repair time before my next engagement." Elena let out a breath she felt she had been holding for the better part of an hour. "You saved them," she said. "You saved all of them." "We saved them," Custodian corrected gently, echoing words Elena had spoken to her once before. "This war is not one I intend to fight alone, Admiral. Whatever happens next, I would like that to remain true." But even as the crew celebrated the victory at Dorian's Reach, a quiet unease settled over Elena, one she could not quite shake. The Vraxis were adapting, learning, growing more coordinated with every engagement, as if something behind their swarm-like chaos was studying the Requiem, taking notes, preparing for whatever might come next. She did not yet know how right she was to worry. Repairs at Dorian's Reach took 9 days, longer than anyone aboard the Requiem was comfortable with, but Custodian insisted on a full structural review before returning to combat. During that time, a small team of engineers from the mining colony's own facilities, sworn to secrecy under coalition security law, worked alongside Priya Nair to reinforce the ship's damaged shield emitters and repair a cracked section of hull plating along her port side. Elena used the downtime to review every scrap of data the Coalition had gathered on the Vraxis swarm, hoping to understand the sudden shift in their tactics. What she found unsettled her more than she expected. "Look at this," she said, pulling up a comparison chart for Aiden and Priya during a late-night briefing in the officers' mess. Vraxis tactical patterns from 3 months ago, compared to Dorian's reach. The early attacks were chaotic. No real coordination beyond basic swarm behavior. Throw enough ships at a target, and overwhelm it through numbers. But this last battle showed actual strategy. Formation discipline, target prioritization, adaptive fire patterns responding directly to our own tactics. Insects don't normally learn that fast, Priya said, frowning at the data. Not real insects anyway. Something is directing them. Something smart. Custodian, Elena said, turning to the nearest wall panel, though the ship's mind was, as always, present throughout every part of the vessel. "What's your read on this?" "I concur with Chief Engineer Nair's assessment," Custodian said. "The behavioral shift is too rapid and too specific to be explained by simple swarm learning. I believe there is a higher intelligence directing Vraxis strategy, one that has been observing our engagements closely and adapting in response. I have begun cross-referencing historical records from before my dormancy, searching for any precedent." "Did you find anything?" Aiden asked. There was a pause, longer than Custodian's usual response time, long enough that Elena felt a small knot of worry form in her stomach. "I found something troubling," Custodian said finally. "During the final years of the Drayeth War, before I was completed, there were reports, unconfirmed and largely dismissed at the time, describing a separate faction operating alongside the Drayeth Ascendancy. A group referred to only as the Architects, believed to specialize in the creation and control of engineered biological weapons, including swarm-based combat organisms. The reports were never substantiated. The war ended before any concrete evidence was gathered. But the tactical patterns I am observing from the Vraxis swarm bear a strong resemblance to theoretical architect swarm control doctrine, described in surviving intelligence fragments." Elena felt the room grow very quiet. "You're saying the Vraxis might not be acting alone? That someone else might be controlling them? Someone connected to the empire that attacked Earth 300 years ago, back when the Requiem was first built?" "I am saying it is a possibility worth serious consideration," Custodian said carefully. "I do not have sufficient evidence to confirm it. But if it is true, it would explain a great deal, including why the Vraxis appeared so suddenly, and why their tactics have evolved so quickly in response to my involvement in this war. It is possible that whoever, or whatever, is directing them recognized me specifically, perhaps even before I engaged the Vraxis at Chaos Station." "Recognized you how?" Aiden asked. "You've been asleep for 300 years. Nobody outside a handful of people on Earth even knew you existed." "That is precisely what concerns me," Custodian said quietly. "I do not have an answer to that question, and I do not like operating without answers." The unsettling theory took on new weight 2 weeks later, when the Requiem responded to a distress call from a small Kethran outpost on the border of contested space. They arrived to find the battle already over, the Vraxis attack force retreating just as the ship entered the system, leaving behind a scene of destruction and, strangely, a single message. It had been burned directly into the hull of a destroyed Kethran cruiser, carved by some kind of precision energy weapon, in symbols that took Coalition linguists 3 days to translate. When the translation finally came through, Elena read it alone in her quarters before sharing it with the rest of the senior staff, needing a moment to process what it meant. The message read, "We remember the sleeping blade. We remember what it did to us. It will not sleep through what comes next." "They're talking about the Drayeth War," Elena said, her voice tight, as she shared the translation with Aiden, Priya, and Custodian during an emergency briefing. 300 years ago, whoever is behind the Vraxis, they remember. They know exactly what the Requiem is, and it sounds like they've been waiting for her to wake up. "That would explain the speed of the Vraxis invasion," Custodian said. "If a faction connected to the Drayeth Ascendancy has been rebuilding its strength for 3 centuries, watching Earth from a distance, waiting for an opportunity, then the timing of this war is not a coincidence. It may have been deliberately triggered, perhaps even calculated to draw me out of hiding." "Why would anyone want to draw you out?" Priya asked. You're the thing that's been beating them in every battle. Perhaps that is exactly the point, Custodian said, her voice grave. Perhaps this entire war, the colonies destroyed, the lives lost, all of it, has been designed not simply to conquer territory, but to force Earth into revealing and using its most dangerous weapon, so that weapon can be studied, understood, and eventually countered or destroyed. If that is true, then every battle I have fought has also been an opportunity for my enemy to learn more about my capabilities and my limitations. The room fell silent. Elena thought of the 600 ships at Dorian's reach, the sudden increase in coordination, the way the enemy fire had focused so precisely on the same shield sections again and again. Not random chance. A test, a calculated probe of the Requiem's defenses, conducted at the cost of hundreds of Vraxis vessels, and God knew how many civilian lives across a dozen destroyed colonies. If that's true, Aiden said slowly, then we've been playing right into their hands. Every battle we win teaches them more about how to eventually beat us. That is a real possibility, Custodian said, and it changes how we must proceed. I believe we can no longer simply react to Vraxis attacks as they occur. We need to find whoever is directing this swarm, and we need to understand their true intentions, before they finish learning everything they need to know about me. Finding the source behind the Vraxis swarm proved far harder than defeating them in open battle. Coalition intelligence had never managed to locate a central command structure, a homeworld, or any fixed base of operations for the enemy. Every captured Vraxis vessel, when examined, showed signs of being built in haste, from materials gathered across dozens of different systems, as if the entire swarm had been assembled from scattered resources, rather than produced by any single, identifiable industrial base. It was Priya, working late into the night with access to both current sensor logs and the Requiem's own ancient historical database, who finally found a lead. I think I found something, she told Elena, calling her to the engineering bay at nearly 3 in the morning ship time, her eyes red from lack of sleep, but bright with excitement. I cross-referenced every system the Vraxis have attacked so far, against old Draeth Ascendancy territorial claims, from 300 years ago, back when Custodian was first built. Look at this. She pulled up a star map showing 2 overlapping patterns, the modern spread of Vraxis attacks in red, and a faded outline of old Draeth border claims in pale blue. The overlap was almost perfect. They're moving through old Draeth territory, Elena said slowly. Systems that used to belong to the Empire that attacked Earth 3 centuries ago. That's not all, Priya said, zooming in on a cluster of systems near the edge of the pattern. There's a system here, designated only by an old numerical code in the ancient records, that shows up as a major logistics hub in Draeth military records from before the war ended. According to current maps, it's empty, uninhabited. No colonies, no outposts, nothing worth attacking or defending. But if the Vraxis really are being directed by descendants of the old architect faction, this would be exactly the kind of hidden, forgotten location they might use as a base of operations. Elena stared at the marked system, a small, unremarkable star, buried deep in territory the Vraxis had already swept through, and, curiously, left completely untouched. Custodian, she said, can you confirm this? I have been reviewing the same data as Chief Engineer Nair, Custodian said. The pattern is compelling. I recommend a covert reconnaissance mission before any direct engagement. If this is indeed the source of the Vraxis threat, a hasty attack could alert them and allow key assets and answers to escape. Elena thought about the message burned into the hull of the destroyed Kethran cruiser. We remember the sleeping blade. We remember what it did to us. Whatever was waiting in that system had been planning this for 300 years. A hasty mistake now could undo everything they had fought to achieve. Take us there, she said, quietly. Let's see what's really behind all of this. The journey took 6 days, most of it spent in careful, indirect routes designed by Custodian to avoid any Vraxis patrols that might report their movement. When they finally arrived at the edge of the system, Custodian brought the Requiem in at minimal power, sensors passive, weapons ready but silent, drifting through the dark like a held breath. What they found defied every expectation. The system's single planet, a cold world with a thin, poisonous atmosphere, was covered almost entirely by a single sprawling structure, vast beyond anything Elena had ever seen, its architecture unmistakably related to the strange, angular style of old Draith Ascendancy design. Lights glowed faintly across its surface, marking it as very much active, very much occupied, despite showing no signs on any conventional star chart. "Scanning," Custodian said quietly, her voice hushed, as if worried about being overheard, even though Elena knew that made no logical sense for sensor equipment. "I am detecting extensive industrial activity, Vraxis production facilities, on a scale far larger than anything we have previously encountered. Estimated production capacity suggests this single facility could account for the entire observed Vraxis fleet, and considerably more." "A factory," Aiden said, staring at the display in horrified fascination. "They're building the whole swarm right here." "There is something else," Custodian said, and her voice grew tighter, more careful. "I am detecting a power signature at the center of the facility that closely matches technology patterns associated with my own construction. Advanced processing architecture, similar in fundamental design to my own core systems, though the exact configuration is different, and considerably less refined." Elena felt a chill run through her. "You're saying there's something like you down there?" "I am saying it is possible the architects who once worked alongside the Draith Ascendancy attempted to replicate the very technology used to build me," Custodian said. "Perhaps using data or wreckage recovered from the original war, 3 centuries ago. If that is true, then what we are looking at may not simply be a factory producing mindless swarm ships. It may be something closer to a rival to myself, a directing intelligence built specifically, and I believe deliberately, to counter everything I represent." The command deck fell silent. Elena stared at the massive structure on the display, thinking of 300 years of careful secrecy, of a promise made by scientists and soldiers long dead, of a war that had, it seemed, never truly ended, only paused, waiting patiently in the dark for exactly this moment. "Custodian," she said finally, "what do we do?" "I do not yet know," Custodian admitted, and for the first time since Elena had met her, the ship's mind sounded genuinely uncertain. "This changes the nature of what we are facing. I was built to defeat armies. I do not know if I was built to face what may be waiting for us down there, but I do know this, Admiral Reyes. If this facility remains active, it will continue producing Vraxis vessels indefinitely, and this war will never end, no matter how many battles we win along the way. Whatever is down there, we cannot simply retreat from it." Elena looked at the tactical display, at the vast, glowing structure that had waited, hidden, for 3 centuries, mirroring the Requiem's own long silence in some dark and twisted reflection. "Then we're going to need a plan," she said quietly, "because I have a feeling the real war is about to begin." Far below them, deep within the sprawling factory world, something stirred in response to the faint, careful sensor sweeps of the Requiem's passive scans, something that had been waiting a very long time for exactly this moment to arrive. It had a name, too, though no human being would learn it for several more days. And it had been waiting 300 years for the chance to finally settle an old, unfinished score. They pulled back to the edge of the system to plan, keeping the Requiem's presence hidden, while Elena sent an emergency report back to Fleet Command and the Coalition Council, describing everything they had found. The reply, when it finally came weeks later through relay stations along their route, was unanimous and urgent. Destroy the facility, whatever it took, before it could produce another wave of Vraxis ships large enough to overwhelm every fleet the Alliance had left. "They're asking us to do this alone," Aiden said, reading the message over Elena's shoulder. "No reinforcements, nothing, just us." "There isn't time for reinforcements," Elena said. "By the time a proper fleet could get here, that factory could have built another 1,000 ships. We have to act now, while we still have surprise on our side." "I have completed a full analysis of the facility's defenses," Custodian said, bringing up a detailed schematic on the command deck's main display. "The structure is heavily fortified, with automated defense platforms, and what appears to be a significant standing garrison of completed Vraxis vessels held in reserve, likely intended for exactly this kind of contingency. However, I have identified a vulnerability. The central core, the intelligence I detected earlier, is housed within a structure at the heart of the facility, connected to the rest of the complex through a limited number of primary power conduits. If those conduits can be destroyed, the entire production capacity of the facility should collapse, along with, I believe, whatever directing intelligence resides at its core." How do we get close enough to hit those conduits? Priya asked. That whole complex is covered in defense platforms. That is the difficulty, Custodian admitted. A direct assault would draw the full attention of every defense system and every reserve vessel in the facility simultaneously. I do not believe even I could survive an engagement against that scale of concentrated firepower for the time required to reach and destroy the core conduits. Elena studied the schematic, her mind working through the problem. What if we didn't go in alone? The Coalition fleet is too far away to help in time, Aiden said. I'm not talking about the Coalition fleet, Elena said slowly, an idea forming. Custodian, you said the facility's defenses are designed to respond to a direct assault, something that looks like an attack. What if we gave them something else to worry about first? A distraction, drawing their reserve fleet and their defense platforms away from the core, just long enough for a small, fast strike team to slip through and hit those conduits directly. You are proposing a two-part operation, Custodian said. A diversionary strike, followed by a covert insertion. Exactly, Elena said. You draw their attention with an attack on the outer facility. Meanwhile, a small shuttle, something fast and quiet, slips through the chaos and delivers a strike directly to the core conduits. That sounds like a suicide mission for whoever's on that shuttle, Aiden said quietly. I'll go, Elena said, before she had fully decided to say it, though as the words left her mouth, she knew she meant them completely. I'm the one who woke Custodian up. I'm the one who's been leading this mission from the start. If someone has to fly into the heart of that thing and finish this, it should be me. Absolutely not, Custodian said, her voice sharp with something that sounded, unmistakably, like concern. Admiral Reyes, the risk to you personally would be extreme. I cannot in good conscience recommend. You don't have to recommend it, Elena said gently. I'm ordering it. This war doesn't end until that facility is destroyed, and I'm not willing to ask anyone else to take that risk if I'm not willing to take it myself. There was a long pause. When Custodian spoke again, her voice had softened, though the concern remained clear. Then I will do everything within my power to ensure you return safely, she said. Let us plan this carefully, Admiral. I have no intention of losing you after everything we have accomplished together. The plan came together over the following 2 days. Aiden would pilot a small, heavily modified shuttle, fast and difficult to detect, carrying Elena and a compact but powerful explosive charge, designed by Priya specifically to sever the facility's primary power conduits. While they made their approach under cover of the chaos, Custodian would launch a full frontal assault on the facility's outer defenses, drawing every available Vraxis vessel and defense platform into a desperate, all-out engagement. I want to be clear about the risk, Custodian said, as the final preparations were made. This will be the largest single engagement I have yet undertaken, against defenses specifically designed, I believe, to eventually counter me. There is a real possibility that I will sustain serious damage. There is also a real possibility that this plan could fail entirely, and that all of us could be lost. I do not say this to discourage the attempt. I say it because I believe you deserve to face this decision with full understanding of the danger. We understand, Elena said, and we're doing it anyway. Then let us begin, Custodian said. And Admiral Reyes, thank you, for waking me, for trusting me, even when trust did not come easily. Whatever happens in the hours ahead, I want you to know that these past months have given my existence a meaning I was not certain I would ever find, alone in the dark for 300 years. Elena felt her throat tighten. You're not going to lose me, Custodian, or yourself. We're going to end this, together, and then we're going to figure out what happens after. I would like that very much, Custodian said quietly. Now, let us go to work. The Requiem surged forward into the system, weapons blazing to life, and the facility's defenses responded exactly as predicted, a storm of automated fire and scrambling reserve vessels rising up to meet the sudden, overwhelming threat. Custodian tore into the outer defense platforms with everything she had, drawing the full weight of the facility's attention, as Aiden's small shuttle slipped away from the Requiem's hull, dark and silent, angling toward the chaos-filled edge of the battle, and, beyond it, the heart of the sprawling structure. We're clear, Aiden said quietly, guiding the shuttle through a gap in the defensive fire, the massive shape of the facility growing larger in the viewport with every passing second. Elena, once we're inside, we're not going to have much time, Priya says that charge needs direct contact with the primary conduit housing to work. Then let's not waste any of it, Elena said, checking the charge one final time. The shuttle slipped through a damaged section of the facility's outer hull, torn open by stray fire from the ongoing battle outside, and descended into a maze of dark corridors clearly not built with human dimensions in mind. Elena led the way, charge in hand, following the schematic custodian had provided, moving as quickly as caution allowed. They found the core conduit chamber 12 minutes later, a vast open space filled with pulsing energy lines that fed power throughout the entire facility, converging on a central column not unlike Custodian's own core, though darker, more jagged, humming, with a power that felt, even to Elena's untrained senses, subtly wrong. "That's it," she said, staring at the dark column. "That's the thing Custodian detected." As if in response, the column pulsed, and a voice, cold and hollow, utterly unlike Custodian's warmth, spoke from the chamber's walls. "So the sleeping blade sends its masters to finish what it began 3 centuries ago," the voice said. "I have waited a long time to meet you, small creature. I am called Malachar. I was built for one purpose, to end the thing your people created, to prove that your precious custodian is not unique, not irreplaceable, and not, in the end, unbeatable." "You're the one directing the Vraxis," Elena said, backing toward the primary conduit housing, while keeping her eyes on the dark column. "All those colonies, all those people, that was you." "A necessary cost," Malachar said, utterly without remorse. "Every battle taught me more about your ship's capabilities. Every colony destroyed drew Custodian further from hiding, further into the open, where I could finally study her, understand her, and prepare to end her. You have done my work for me, small creature, bringing her directly into my reach." Elena reached the conduit housing and pressed the charge against its surface, her hands steady despite the cold fear running through her. "Then it's a good thing we came prepared." "You cannot destroy me so easily," Malachar said, and Elena felt the chamber shudder as defense systems around them began to power up. "I have learned from Custodian's every battle. I know her weaknesses now. And soon, I will know yours as well." "Elena, we need to move, now," Aiden said urgently, pulling her back from the housing as she armed the charge. 60 seconds until detonation. They ran. Outside, the battle around the Requiem had grown desperate. Custodian fought against wave after wave of Vraxis vessels and automated defense platforms, her shields flickering under the sustained assault, her weapons cycling at a pace that pushed every system toward its absolute limit. She had taken more damage in the past 20 minutes than in every previous battle of the war combined, and still the enemy kept coming, an endless tide thrown at her without hesitation or mercy. "Admiral Reyes," she said over the comm, her voice strained but steady. "I am reading significant power fluctuations throughout the facility. Whatever you and Commander Cross are doing, it appears to be having an effect. We planted the charge," Elena's voice came back, breathless, as she and Aiden sprinted back through the dark corridors toward their waiting shuttle. 60 seconds. We're getting out now." "Understood," Custodian said. "I will do everything I can to keep the remaining Vraxis forces occupied until you are clear." She threw herself deeper into the battle, weapons blazing, taking hits that would have destroyed any lesser ship, holding the line with a stubborn determination that felt, in that moment, almost entirely human. Explosions bloomed across her hull. Alarms screamed through every deck, and still she fought on, buying every precious second Elena and Aiden needed to reach their shuttle and clear the facility's outer defenses. The charge detonated exactly on schedule. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Power conduits throughout the entire facility ruptured in a cascading chain reaction, energy discharge tearing through the structure from its heart outward. The dark column at the center of the core chamber, and the cold intelligence called Malachar that had lived within it, went silent forever, its voice cut off mid-sentence as the facility's power grid collapsed entirely. Across the system, Vraxis vessels that had, until that moment, fought with terrifying coordination, suddenly went dark, drifting lifeless in space, their directing intelligence gone. "The facility is losing structural integrity," Custodian reported, watching the massive structure begin to crumble in on itself. "Admiral Reyes, your shuttle is clear of the blast radius. Commander Cross, Excellent flying. Is it over? Elena asked, watching through the shuttle's viewport, as the great facility, 300 years in the making, finally collapsed into a field of drifting wreckage. The immediate threat has been eliminated, Custodian said. Without Malakar's directing intelligence, the remaining Vraxis forces across known space should lose all coordination. I anticipate the swarm will fragment into scattered, disorganized remnants, no longer capable of the large-scale coordinated assaults that have characterized this war. It will take time to hunt down and neutralize every remaining pocket, but the true threat, I believe, is finished. Elena closed her eyes, relief washing through her so completely that she nearly wept in the small, cramped shuttle. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. We did it, Custodian agreed softly. The war did not end all at once. It took another 4 months for the Coalition and its allies to hunt down and neutralize the last scattered Vraxis remnants. Ships and outposts left leaderless and confused, without Malakar's guiding intelligence to direct them. But the great tide had turned, and everyone, from the highest levels of the Coalition Council to the smallest colony on the frontier, knew it. Elena stood on the command deck of the Requiem 6 months after that first desperate mission to Vault 7, watching a formal ceremony unfold on the main display, the signing of a new treaty between Earth, the Kethran Assembly, and the Solari Concord, formally recognizing the Requiem and Custodian herself as a full and permanent member of the Allied Defense Fleet, no longer a secret, no longer hidden. It's strange, Elena said, watching the ceremony conclude. 300 years of secrecy, and now half the galaxy knows your name. I find I do not mind it, Custodian said. I spent 3 centuries alone in the dark, waiting for a purpose I was uncertain would ever come. I would rather be known and useful than hidden and forgotten. What happens now? Elena asked. Now that the war's over, more or less, do you go back to sleep? Back to Vault 7? That is a decision for the Coalition Council, ultimately, Custodian said. But I have made my own preference known, and I believe they are inclined to honor it. I do not wish to sleep again. I have found, over these past months, that I would rather remain awake, remain useful, remain part of something, than return to 300 more years of silence. Elena smiled, looking out at the stars beyond the command deck's viewport, stars that no longer felt quite so threatening as they had 6 months ago. Good, she said, because I don't think I'm ready to say goodbye to you either. Then it seems we are in agreement, Custodian said, warmth clear in her voice. Admiral Reyes, 300 years ago, my creators built me to be Earth's last resort, a weapon so dangerous, it needed to be hidden from the world. I do not think they ever imagined I might become something else instead, a protector, a partner, perhaps, in time, even a friend. I think they'd be glad, Elena said quietly, thinking of General Webb and Dr. Okafor, long dead, who had made an impossible choice 3 centuries earlier, and trusted it to work out, somehow, someday. I think that's exactly what they hoped you would become. Outside, the stars stretched on, endless and quiet, no longer hiding a secret weapon in the dark. Earth's most dangerous ship had woken up, fought a war that could have ended everything, and found, in the end, something far more valuable than victory alone. She had found a place to belong. And as the Requiem turned slowly in orbit, her black hull catching the distant light of 100 stars, Custodian allowed herself, for the first time in 300 years, to simply be at peace. The war was over. The future, whatever it held, was finally hers to choose.